Hi, Michelle. How are you? You're up and about.
Yeah, I'm in my chair. I've got my foot propped up, so thanks.
You feeling all right?
No, I need some medicine, but pain meds, but I want to not take them till after the meeting.
The sign, the lady brought the sign, okay? So I'll put it up.
Great. Thank you for doing that.
Okay. All right, good.
Is it Kwame or Elisa on?
Elisa.
Hi. Okay, thanks. So I just wanted to remind you that Emily Skydale was coming.
Yes, I
I
did
don't
send
know.
her the link earlier.
Okay. She said that she will need to share her screen just for a little bit,
Okay.
but she'll have a map, so.
All righty. Sounds good. I'll be looking for her.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Hope you feel better.
Thank you. Stop.
Hear us, Michelle? Can you hear us?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good. Hello. Michael. Hello. Oh, hi, Michelle.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, Michelle.
You're occupying the entire television.
Oh,
Bigger than life.
I don't have any lettuce in my teeth.
how you feeling? You had a little procedure on you.
I had surgery on my ankle yesterday.
You had what?
Surgery on my ankle, so I have to be off it and elevated for 2 weeks.
Oh, jeez. Hello.
Got Melissa by the chair.
Morning, good evening, good evening. Good evening.
Did I just see you here a little while ago? What day was that? I'm trying to get out of town on vacation.
Really?
In 2 days. And of course, the problem with taking a vacation is that you have to get everything done that you would do that week before you go. So I'm like, burying and stuff.
No, you wait till you come back and see what actually has to be done.
These are grant deadlines. Gotta get it through October 1st. This, what?
For the judges.
I know, I must be nuts.
You're tracing the line.
You don't take a break after like the CFAs? Well, no, because then I got involved in the Ulster County Arts
Oh,
thing. Normally I would take a break.
yeah.
I haven't taken a break since last Christmas. Yeah, no, I'm burned out, so I can hardly wait to get out of here.
Looks like Michelle survived her surgery.
She did, there she is, she's alive. This is always good.
They operated on the correct foot, so that's good.
Yeah. Did they use a magic marker to to indicate which leg?
This
Yeah.
way.
They did that with my hip. I had like this big,
This here.
big X. And it's okay that the surgery went well?
It was more complicated than they thought, but it went well.
Good, good.
In other words, they were playing solitaire while you were under.
That's good.
Thank you.
So Rennie, Emily is Skydell from Food and Water Watch is on, so if we can move her to the top.
Okay. Which item is that?
Number 2, the Iroquois expand pipeline.
Okay. There we go.
I just made her a co-host so she can share.
Thank you.
We don't want that.
I'm in.
I'll leave them. I have to.
All right. Sorry, we're getting wrong here.
Well, I put them up because I find it hard to read on them.
No, but what I mean, why?
This is okay.
We said we print the 89 pages or so.
You printed one copy. They also doubled one of the longest items in there.
I saw that. That was good. I didn't have to read it twice.
Right,
Yeah.
and you don't want to change the second time?
It might have been.
You're trusting, it's good.
I was trusting that somebody else would read it and see it.
It's the same. Not worry about it.
I did though compare the ethics form from, that was there with the previous one that I had signed. Very minor differences. But there were differences, but minor.
You didn't do that, you did, AI did that.
A lot of work. Doing math for me, sorry.
I use AI a lot, actually, but I didn't use it.
No.
I tell you, a client of mine used it for a year-end appeal letter, and they created like this really great year-end appeal letter. She said, I need to be, tweaked for the organization, and she said, boy, that's better than the last grant writer
Wow.
created for us. It was really nice.
You don't like that big problem, it's gonna be a problem for the university professors.
Yes.
It really is. Yeah.
All ready to give out 2-0.
Waiting on something to start the meeting, or do you guys want to call to order and?
We're waiting.
What are we waiting for?
Me to figure out, because there was all this stuff, apparently went to my private email, not to the city email, so I'm trying to get these things sorted.
Sorry, Rennie, I sent one, I think, but the rest went to your.
Okay. Got it.
There's a lot to me. I'm sorry that this worked out this way.
No problem. We got it sorted. Alyssa, are we going? We're recording live and everything?
This is the time to go.
You are ready to roll.
All right, good. Thank you, everyone. I will call this meeting of the Laws and Rules Committee of the Kingston Common Council to order at 6:37 here on the 18th of September, 2024. I am sitting in for Michelle Hirsch as chair. Michelle Hirsch is joining us via Zoom, so she's an official participant. We have all the other members of the committee, plus Michael Tierney with us. All right, and Matt Jankowski, our lawyer, corporation counsel. So we're going to alter the agenda slightly. We're going to move up the memorializing resolution to deny Iroquois pipeline expansion so that our visitor can tell us what's going on and move along.
Awesome, thank you. Should I get started or?
Start away.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this, and I appreciate Michelle for being so responsive and taking this up because this is super important. So my name's Emily Skydell. I'm a senior organizer for Food and Water Watch. We're a national organization that here in New York has spent over a decade working on stopping frack gas pipelines and power plants. And we were heavily involved in the big fracking ban win back in 2014. I myself got started back in 2012 in this work on my college campus in Binghamton fighting fracking. We've come a long way in this fight. I'm sure some of you were part of that effort. So I thank you for that and for all the work that you've been doing to help us with this. So obviously fracking and frack gas are dangerous and they're destructive. It's destructive at every step of the process. And it's our growing reliance on frack gas that's destroying our planet and our climate. And we need to ban fracking nationwide. And here in New York, we need to stop the expansion of fracked gas pipelines and power plants in order to move ourselves to 100% renewables. So we're looking to the state. We're looking to the state to lead on this, and we're seen as a state nationwide that leads on this. We set the bar, and others follow. We were the first state to ban fracking that had fracked gas shale. We passed the most ambitious climate goals in the country with the 2019 climate law. So, you know, at a bare minimum, we've got to stop growing this destructive gas system out. And we're never really going to make progress towards this goal of 100% renewables if we're still feeding this fossil fuel industry beast. So it's really up to Governor Hochul, and she has real decisions she can make. And we have a real test for Governor Hochul right now. And that's sort of what I'm here to talk about. There's an existing pipeline in our region called the Iroquois Pipeline, which is applying for a permit to expand. I'm going to share my screen so you can just see the route of the pipeline. So you should be able to see it. Basically, this is a pipeline that cuts from the border of Canada all the way down past the Adirondacks, past the Catskills, and then crosses the Hudson River from Athens into Hudson. And it crosses over, and that's like about, I don't know, 30 miles north of Kingston. Crosses over the pipeline itself, you know, crosses through Columbia, through Dutchess, crosses through Dover into Connecticut before passing across the Long Island Sound, where it delivers gas to Long Island and to New York City. It's a really massive pipeline, but the thing that's kind of important or significant for us to know in this region is that the proposals to expand the pipeline right in Athens and in Dover. And the way that they're doing this expansion, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen. The way that they're doing this expansion is by doubling the amount of pressure that they put on this pipeline. They're not adding more pipe, but this is a over 30-year-old pipeline. And the proposal is to double the size of compressor stations in Athens and Dover, and basically so that they can transport a larger volume of gas to New York City and Long Island. Now, we know that we don't need to be expanding the gas system. It goes against our climate law. Just a couple days ago, we saw a pipeline explosion in Texas. You know, we've seen cancer clusters and other health issues from nitrous oxide and carcinogens that come from fracking infrastructure. So we don't want to see this expansion. And so this pipeline they have to apply for an air permit from the DEC in order to get the approval to expand the pipeline. And we were expecting a decision on this like spring 2023, and it's been delayed. So that's the good news. And I know many of you remember our successful campaign to stop the Dan Scammer power plant in Newburgh. That was a really exciting win. It set a precedent that the climate law, that expanding fracking pipeline power plants goes against the climate law. Well, this should also go against the climate law, expanding frack gas pipelines. So that's really what we're hoping will be the ultimate decision. But the most powerful tactic that we used in getting Governor Hochul to listen to us in the past was through municipal resolutions, getting local governments to pass resolutions. We've gotten 4 so far, and we are really excited by the prospect of, Kingston being the 5th one. And, ultimately Governor Hochul represents all of us. So if we can build this unified voice of opposition, we can make it very clear to her that how her decision will be received by local leaders and voters. Unfortunately, she's not going to act without this kind of pressure. So we've gotten resos passed in town of Poughkeepsie, city of Hudson, village of New Paltz, town of New Paltz so far.
New Paltz.
And I say that again?
New Paltz before us?
Both New Paltzes, village and town.
All right. Are there any questions for Skydale?
Well, what is the justification for the expansion of the pipeline? Especially in consideration of the fact that New York State has more population leaving it than pretty much any other state.
I know, it's a good question. I mean, the justification has to be taken with a grain of salt, 'cause it's always coming from the private utility, National Grid and Con Ed, who both those utilities have a financial interest in this pipeline. They own it. They make money off of the expansion, but they say that that people are going to be switching from, petroleum to frack gas, which is kind of ridiculous. It's like this old argument of frack gas being a bridge fuel, but we know that methane has a higher 10 times more of a climate warming, chemical. So it's not a bridge fuel by any means, but that's one of the arguments that they give is that, I see a hand too.
Is that Michelle and somebody online?
It's
Yes.
Jeannie.
Yeah.
All right, can you hear me? Hi, guys. Hi, everyone. I kind of have a 2-part question. The first part is 30 years with the pressure that is in through the water and the electricity, are all the water keepers like getting together to protest? And this is very important. And how far does it go up to where we could connect with the reservations and stuff to really bring this out?
Yeah, so the sound keeper, the Save the Sound has just gotten involved. Riverkeeper, I need to get a better, I haven't been in contact with them as much, but I need to. But you're right, like they need to speak out. More groups that are representing the sound and the river need to be on this. And the pipeline goes all the way up to the border of Canada. The expansion really starts in Athens because that's where the compressor station's being proposed. But if you look at the map, it's like it's very close. It cuts across the river and then it runs parallel to the river at one point, like 10 miles from Kingston when across the river. So
This is very concerning
yeah.
to all of us. It's fracking is really concerning. So if somehow I could get a hold of some literature or something, I'd like to send it to all the people that I know, the river keepers and the reservations and stuff, and see if we could gather together and get something moved.
Thank you
And
so
thank
much.
you.
That would be great. And we're actually doing High Action on September 28th Saturday at noon, a rally and a protest in the river and on land. So it would be so great to get, any of you who are around should come. Jean, I'll send you the information too, and hopefully we can get those folks more involved.
Yes, and there's a canoe group that would get involved in that also from by Ramapo. So yeah, if you get me the information, I would really appreciate it. I'm dead against fracking.
Great. Can you put your info in the chat, your email?
I sure will. Thank you.
All right, any other questions, Bob?
So this is not about, we're not talking about installing a new pipeline. We have an existing pipeline, and we're just talking about increasing the pressure south of Athens. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have any sense of, if you're doubling the pressure, I'm guessing that's doubling the amount of gas, do you think that they're considering that there is going to be a significant expansion of the need for natural gas down in the city?
It's sort of like the tail wagging the dog. Like they're creating an opportunity for more gas, and then they're going to try to sell it, but they can't sell more gas if they can't get more gas to the city, So then they go and lobby, the state to, there's work they're doing to make the case for more gas and then figure out a way to sell it. But people can easily be switching to heat pumps and, switching over to renewables and electrifying and doing all the things that we know can be done.
Okay, any other questions, Sarah?
Have you reached out to other municipalities up and down the Hudson? I assume you have, but I would be happy to reach out to people I know in some of the other municipalities.
That would be so helpful. Yeah, we're working on it up and down the Hudson. But if you have ideas of specific towns that you think would pass resolutions, that would be so great.
And I think Michelle can probably give me your email, correct?
Yeah, I'll forward that. Thank you, Sarah.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emily.
Anything else? Other questions?
Want to say thank you to Emily for coming.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me.
thanks.
Thank you.
All right, do we have a motion to approve? Sarah Paskey, second by Terrell. Any discussion?
I'm probably gonna go no on this, because I'm not real convinced that increasing the pressure south of Athens is a bad thing to do. And I'm not convinced that the gas from Canada is all fracked. So.
It's Canadian.
Well, I have a question for you as an engineer.
Yes, ma'am.
Would the amount of pressure that they're talking about increasing, does that pose a risk to any of the pipes and the explosions that have happened in other places? And
Well, if you increase pressure, obviously you're gonna, there's an increased risk.
right,
My presumption is that those that design it and those that regulate it understand that. They're not gonna create a situation that's gonna be dangerous. Well, well, we don't. It actually doesn't go through our county either, which is another.
it doesn't, it's true.
Can I respond, or am I?
Actually, no, sorry,
No?
unless you have a specific question for her.
Oh, I just had a direct response, but I don't have, if it's not allowed. It's
This
okay.
is in the form of a question from somebody on the committee.
I'll ask one question. I'll give you an opportunity. I have one question. How do we know that the gas that's used, that this pipeline transmits is fracked from Canada and not simply, traditionally?
Natural gas.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know what do they call that?
Well,
I don't
that's a good question. I mean, most of the gas that we get in New York State is fracked. I wanted to add that, like, that when this pipeline was first built, it had the highest, it had the highest legal suit next to the ExxonMobil spill. Like it was poorly constructed 30 years ago, and there was a huge lawsuit. They were sued the highest amount of money next to the Valdez oil spill. So not so trusting of their construction. I can send that article around too.
All right, any other discussion, Michael?
Yeah, are our climate goals threatened by both of our presidential candidates disgracefully being pro fracking?
That's not germane here,
I think it is, that's their
not
both
to
in favor
this
of it.
specific issue.
Yes, it is.
So, all right, if there's no more discussion, then I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? One opposed. So Michelle, you're okay for me signing for you, right?
Please, thank you.
Yes. Okay. Oops.
Is it opposing fracking or supporting fracking? Did I say oppose or?
I don't,
You said, they said they like it.
Yeah.
I guess it was support.
Thank you.
All right. Emily, if you're still there, the process, I don't know if you're familiar with our process or how similar it is to other places, but so it's passed this committee. That means it will go to the full Common Council at our October meeting, which will be October 1st, where it will be voted on. So there are 4 other members, 3 other members, 2 other members who are not here tonight. So I don't know if you want to get in touch with them to convince them of the sanity of your proposal here. All right.
Yeah. I'll forward an email to you with everybody's email. Thanks, Emily.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, then we will go back to item number 1, which is the project labor agreement proposal. Bob Dennison is making this proposal, so Bob, will you
Sure.
tell us?
In your packet or in the agenda, there is a draft resolution regarding the use of project labor agreements. I'm a fan of them. I think that we should use them for our large projects. Those are projects where the labor cost exceeds $1 million or more. If you go below $1 million, it really doesn't, you don't get much benefit. And most of our projects, to be honest, are below $1 million in labor. So we're talking about the big projects like the stadium, Ward Street Bridge was a PLA, the dam was a PLA. For those projects, my experience is that this helps us get them done on time and within our budget. There will be some people who are open contractors who will not be enthusiastic about this. Okay? But I think it's worth doing. They can still participate. No one is barred from participation. It's just a little more difficult for those that are open shop contractors. And it also, one of the benefits, sometimes they call these community labor agreements because you're dealing with local unions. So ideally, people who are doing the work are members of local unions and therefore local. So that's kind of my spiel. I don't know if anybody has any questions about it. Due diligence studies are the first step in a project labor agreement, where a consultant evaluates whether there is savings in cost or schedule to be gained.
And in my office, so we have a few questions, I guess pertaining to whether there's information on who is, there's anyone proposed to be doing these due diligence studies, what criteria.
There's a number of firms that do this work, due diligence studies. I'm going to give you a list of
So
them.
it would be something.
So it's an expert, it'd be something, you would not be, right, it's something that's done by a consultant. And there's a number of firms that do it.
Okay, and then, all right.
In fact, we did one for Deep Stadium with a firm.
I have a question related to.
Yeah, that pretty much primarily had to do with who would be doing the studies and what kind of criteria they would be looking at.
And what they primarily look at in due diligence study is the cost of labor and the possibilities of labor unrest, and the possibility and the ability to provide laborers, people who can do the work competently. You know, it's a separate, it also relieves the Wicks law, which is kind of a nice thing. You know, right now, if you do a project that requires multiple disciplines under New York state law, you have to have a separate contract for each of those disciplines. If we did a big building, for example, we'd have to have a separate contract for the plumbing, and a separate contract for the electrical, and a separate contract for the site work, and that becomes problematic as you go forward. Project labor agreement eliminates that, which is a handy thing.
Sarah,
And it eliminates that because they're all because the project labor agreement allows subcontractors.
It includes
So it includes-
everybody working on the jobs in the project labor agreement.
And just one second question, how much do these due diligence sort of,
Well, it's a hard one, it depends on the size of the job. You know,
right, but I guess in other words, it doesn't add considerably to the overall cost of the
it's
project.
not a major, right, it doesn't, it's not a major expense for a job, in my experience. You know, and it's hard to estimate that given, could be a giant, could be a big job, could be, I want to say for Dietz Stadium, I'm gonna say, I'm not gonna be right. I think it was less than 10,000, but I'm not.
Oh, okay, I was thinking more like in the 50,000 range.
Yeah,
It's not- it doesn't make that-
I don't know the number, so we can look that up. But it's typically not a large piece of the job for that stuff.
Carol?
So, this, if I understand correctly, would only come into effect for those projects that exceed $1 million?
Only those projects where the labor costs.
The labor-
exceeds $1 million.
Labor,
exceeds, I'm
okay.
Now,
sorry.
labor typically is 40% of a
Oh,
project. So you're looking at jobs that are 2.5 million, 3 million,
Oh,
you know,
Okay, thank you.
jobs.
And so, have there been any studies on the effect of project labor agreements and minority-owned businesses? Have you reviewed?
WMBE contractors are included.
Mhm.
And in fact, in a project labor agreement, which we would be party to, you can set goals. And so you can play a more active role in getting workers that are underrepresented in the construction
Can
industry.
you go outside of the?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You know, and which is always a challenge when there is a requirement, because there's not a lot of contractors that are capable and, you know, classified as MB, WBE, or so they're the Department of Development for the state, I'll think of their name in a minute, keeps a log of certified WBE, MBE contractors. And that list typically is used by a contractor to solicit proposals from people to do work if there's a goal set in the project. And you can set a goal in the project labor agreement.
okay, yeah, I've gone into this.
It's also a way for underrepresented contractors who may not be union members to get into unions. I've seen it used for that
Oh,
function as
interesting.
well, saying, you know, you're not in, we'll give you a card, come work for us, you know, come work in this job. So I've seen it work in that way as well. So I'm a big fan.
Other questions? Have you talked to the mayor about this?
I sent him a copy of this and we've had conversations about it, and I think he's a believer in project labor agreements. He did it on Dietz Stadium with good results. So he's not, yes, I think he's fine.
Yes.
Uh,
You spoke in favor of.
Say,
You spoke in favor of
PLS.
PLAs, okay.
There may be some pushback from open shop contractors. Be aware.
Yes, sure, Mike.
So you said that $1 million, it doesn't seem to have that, below $1 million, it doesn't necessarily have that same benefits. This would really restrict us to the larger projects.
Right.
I think it could be advantageous for us to drop it down to 750.
This doesn't preclude us from.
No,
That's true.
doesn't preclude you from doing it on any job. The people I've talked to who do due diligence studies and negotiate project labor agreements have told me that you can go to 750, but you're not going to find the results. You're going to pay for due diligence study. It's not going to generate an agreement. So you can do it if you want, because they like the work.
Right.
But they say $1 million probably makes the most sense. We could go lower. You know, and it depends on the job too. If you get a job that's complicated and has more labor involved than a job, you know, for example, a resurfacing project, which is primarily a materials project. You know, you're paving crew, you know, it's mostly materials. You probably are not gonna get to $1 million on labor. You may get to 3/4, but your costs are not gonna, you're not gonna have a big benefit in it. Because you don't have to worry, unless there's union agreements that are unresolved. You know, one of the risks to construction projects is that, you know, the laborers don't have agreements right now. So if you let your contract, that could change things for you later on. With a project labor agreement, you avoid all that stuff. Because you've got an agreement. Yeah, doesn't, you know, when you talk about costs of construction labor, you know, we're bound by we have to pay the prevailing wage by law.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't affect, you know, the prevailing wage that we're paying to labor. You know, it could, if you're open shop a little bit, affect the prevailing wage, or prevent what they have to pay the workers. But, so it's really a lot about time and a lot about things like the Wicks law.
So, but the mayor could do this anyway, right? It doesn't necessarily need this piece of legislation to ask. Yeah. So what's the problem that we're trying to solve here?
I want to make it plain that we're going to go in this direction. I think it's important to make the statement that we should do project labor.
Okay. I have a question that's going to require us to our attorney.
Can I ask a question or just make a statement before? Sorry, my hand has been up.
We don't see your hand, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we
I
understand.
see now.
All
Now
we
that
see
you're
is
talking.
one huge individual at a time.
Oh, you need to change the screen. Can somebody do that?
Well,
Go to gallery.
When we go into attorney-client.
Yeah, we can do that when we go in. You want to ask me before we go into attorney-client session?
I guess it doesn't matter. I could ask later.
We can ask now.
Well, now I forgot what I was gonna ask. Oh, I know, sorry. I've been sick all week, so I'm not doing well. So it kind of more of a question / statement because I could see this as being a controversial issue. So I'm assuming, Bob, but correct me if I'm wrong, this isn't a time-sensitive issue, right? I mean, I know you've been talking about it and you want it, but there's, because I think that this will be a little bit of a controversy, and I think it will be important for the public to have an opportunity to weigh in. And since it's not a time-sensitive issue, this might be something that we talk about today and then maybe talk about next month at Laws and Rules, just to give the public a little bit more room to reach out to us, just from what I'm hearing in the public.
Well, I understand what you're
Throw that
saying.
out.
You know, I did meet with some open shop contractors to talk about this and explained it to them. It didn't, of course, I didn't convince them. But my concern is that the infrastructure bill that went through Congress 2 years ago is finally getting to the point where they have rules and regulations. So my expectation is that soon we're going to start to see the fruits of that bill. We have not really seen any of it yet. And they, from what I understand, the rules and regulations are finally getting, you know, formalized. And once that happens, then there will be money. And there will be money for big jobs. And so big jobs, you know, I don't want to be, the mayor could do it without this resolution.
Yeah.
However, I think it makes it easier for him to do it if we have this resolution. And, you know, I'm worried about money coming before we're ready. So I understand what you're saying. We could wait a month, you know.
Yeah, that was all my suggestion. I'm not necessarily against this, but like I said, because I think that this will be more controversial, and a lot of things that we do that are time sensitive, you know, this one, maybe it is a little bit more than I was thinking, but that I just wanted to share what I've been hearing.
All right. Well, I have a question I have to ask the attorney. So we're gonna go into,
We need a motion to go into.
no, not for attorney-client session.
Okay.
So how are we gonna do this?
Michael's gonna
call me.
Should just be on gallery.
Yeah, can somebody call me? Because our conference, I never went back and fixed that.
Let's see. I'll try to call you.
And so
Sarah,
can
can
somebody
you call-
come, Jeannie too?
Sarah, give me a call, please.
Yes, I can call you.
Great, thank you.
I have
And then
this-
somebody has to turn off this video. Somebody in conference room.
Sarah, call my home cell.
See you virtually.
You're right about the rush though, with that's what we just said at the county with the water and sewer, so that's what we have to do it in.
Oh.
Did you put the cameras on gallery?
Oh,
Do you know how to put it on gallery?
We're back, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard to, I'll try and do this by memory, but I think you go to view
I got it.
Got it.
and,
Oh,
and then you'll be able to see all of us.
All your beautiful faces.
yay.
we can see everybody. How lovely.
All right, so we're discussing the question about project labor agreements. Where we were at the before we went into attorney-client session was a suggestion to hold off for 1 month. So that's open for discussion. Actually, I think the proper way to do this, actually, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, is that we need a motion and a second. And then we could discuss whether to put it on old business rather than send it to the council. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that would be appropriate, to have a motion to pass it, second, and then during the discussion. And unless someone has a motion, you can do a motion to table it to the next meeting. Either motion can be brought forward.
So I motion that we pass it.
This is motion for discussion, right? Or no,
Well, and then we
pass
pass
the
it.
discussion
Well, it's usually framed as a motion to adopt.
to adopt.
Then we'll talk about whether we want to
Send it back.
Okay.
send it back. But let me write the description first, because for some reason there are no committee reports
And I will second it.
here in this. All right, I will put this down.
Can I just ask another question to Bob
Yeah.
while you're doing that, Rennie?
Yes.
Bob, are there any other that you know municipalities that have a resolution like this that we could look at and then maybe see how they're doing with it, just to, not reinvent the wheel? Do you know of any other municipalities?
I don't know of municipalities that have resolutions. There's a possibility that the city of New York may have one. I would bet that they do. The state has a policy and the federal government has a policy. And in fact, the president has come out with a policy saying that he wants to do project labor agreements on the federal aid projects. So the state has done it. They want to continue to do it. I don't know about other municipalities. I would guess New York City does. I would just, maybe Buffalo, I don't know. I could do some research, but this is not revolutionary. We're not the first to do this. And, I think it's past due.
Thank you.
Okay. So the resolution reads, adopt a resolution regarding the use of project labor agreements by the city of Kingston on large capital projects. As attached, you all have seen the whereases and therefores, I believe, or resolved, I'm sorry, look for resolved as opposed to therefores. Okay? So any discussion? Mike?
I don't see a reason not to move forward.
Not to move forward.
Just a quick question, how wording on how to resolution.
So in other words, free.
You don't want to.
You would like to see this one for me.
Bring in
Well, I
philosophy.
say as a town, so
It's a good philosophy.
hopefully that's still. Well, we're talking about the merits first. Let's talk about the merits. Is there anything anybody wants to say in terms of the merits itself of the resolution?
Talk about we've used project labor agreements successfully on Dietz, on the bridge, the Rich Street Bridge, the state used it on. We used it on our dam project,
Don't speak that way.
To me, and I've used it in other projects and other locations with success. I've never regretted using a project labor agreement when it was justified.
And I can see the advantage when it comes to timing and scheduling, because you have agreement, the contractor would have agreements with subcontractors to make sure that the scheduling is done, so there's no lost time trying to get other contracts set and other contractors in.
Michelle?
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with this. I believe that it does keep everybody on schedule, get projects done more expeditiously. I know that Biden has called for these for the Inflation Reduction Act, and I believe that it will help us to get more money for, future projects. And this doesn't preclude any small shops or the open shops from trying to get, work with them. So.
If I could add one more thing. Remember, if the due diligence study shows that it will not be a benefit, you don't do it.
Yeah.
So, it isn't, we're not compelling we're not compelling people to do a project labor agreement if it doesn't make sense.
Are there any issues with like cost overruns? How is that resolved?
Well, the cost overruns like at the stadium are negotiated if they occur.
They're part of the overall contract.
Part of the overall contract. What you're protecting yourself against is the availability of labor and the availability of the contractor has to do their job as far as materials and stuff is concerned.
So there's no inherent protection against cost overruns or.
Well, you're agreeing with. Well, it's a hard question. What causes a cost overrun? Let me give you an example. In Deep Stadium, we found rock they didn't expect to find. Well, the project labor agreement is not going to affect it. It does affect, you could renegotiate schedule and you could talk about stuff associated with it, but it gives you an opportunity to do that, have that conversation. Despite the extra rock that they found at Deep Stadium, they finished on time. Is that because of the project labor agreement? I would take the position that it helped.
So if material costs skyrocket,
That's between the contractor and his material suppliers. And theoretically, when the contractor executes a contract, they lock in as many of those things as they can, so they don't get surprises from materials costs and stuff. What you don't want to get is surprises from labor. Like, we're gonna go on strike next week.
But theoretically, all that stuff is down the road from this resolution.
Right.
Because
This
this
is
is
due
just,
diligence stuff.
yeah,
Really.
this is just about doing a study. Any other comments? Okay, I will say, so my concerns are two. I'm in favor of this on the merits. My concerns are one, giving, because I know that there's been a lot of discussion about related issues, and I think that there are a number of folks who'd like to weigh in on this. And I don't know if passing it tonight and then having it at the October meeting gives folks enough time to meet and discuss and meet with their representatives and discuss. And the other thing is at the very least, I would want to have the mayor's direct assurance via email or written that he's in favor of this so that we're clear we don't, talking about dotting your I's and drinking your tea. But so that's my concern. Does somebody online have something? No? Anybody? Oh, Michael, you have your hand up.
No, I just think that Alderman Dennison has been talking about this in this committee meeting for months now. So, we've all known about it, and so has the public. I've had people reach out to me about it for months. I think it's a great thing.
All right, is there any other discussion? Then I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Hi.
Opposed? Wow. So that's 4 for, and 1 against. So we'll go to the common council unless we decide to send it back to committee later. All right. We will move to the next item on the agenda, which is food truck regulations. Alderwoman Edwards. Where's Michelle? Michelle,
I'm here.
yes.
There we are. Yeah, so I'm still bringing it up about this because we can't seem to, come to some kind of resolution with this, that we definitely need to have things followed up. We do have stuff in the ordinance already about the trucks leaving the streets and nobody is doing it. And I feel like we're really losing the public by people not obeying the law, basically. So I really urge that we do this for public safety reasons all the way around. I proposed, I think you all received it, you know, the letters that I have received and the phone calls on this. This is to some people, to most people that are dealing with the streets in Kingston. This is a very important topic.
All right, questions for Jean?
And I'm welcoming any input and change so we could get this pushed forward and keep our streets safe. So, you know, that's why it's all before you again.
Jeannie, just the one thing I recommend, if you want to reach out to me this week, and I'm full-time and scheduled to come to the office down on 20 Broadway, I can assist you in drafting the proposed changes and a resolution so that it can be presented at the next month's meeting.
That's fine. Whatever everyone decides, we just have to move forward with it. And I appreciate that. I'll call the office this week and see if we could schedule it for next week sometime.
Andrea? Then Sarah?
Yeah, just, I mean, I know that there are, let me pull it up, 4 different suggestions from the most recent communication. Matt, if you're gonna be drafting something, I mean, some of these I'm in favor of today, some of them I wouldn't be. Some of them I just have a little bit more questions on. So would you plan on, or could there be a way that you separate those different points so that, you know, maybe some of these things can move along a little bit faster and other things can have a little bit more deliberation?
Yeah.
So for example,
Definitely work on
the no residential areas, you know, I think that would have to be further defined with our zoning code. Because, you know, we just established a new zoning code that we're trying to encourage mixed use. And a lot of our zones are now mixed use. So to just say residential area, what does that mean? You know, so that one I may or may not be in favor depending on what the definition is, but other things like the 30 feet from any corner intersection, that one that makes sense to me. And then of course the food trucks that are not in operation, if that's already a law, and you know, also then comparing state law, like I would just like to see some separation if that's possible.
Right, with the state law, we can impose stricter laws, but we can't go, you know, lesser. But with the residential areas, you have such tight streets like Van Buren, Van Dusen, Liberty, Maiden Lane. These are residential neighborhoods that couldn't withstand anymore on them, you know, so that's.
No, I'm just saying we need to define residential area in accordance with our zoning code.
I understand.
Because residential area doesn't mean the same with our current zoning code.
Okay.
Right, and there might be a street width issue to consider there as well. Michelle, then Michael, sir, did you have that?
I had a question, but I think my question was pretty similar to Andrea's, because there's some issues, because in my ward we have Forsyth Park, so I'm sort of interested to see how food trucks might be, you know, established in Forsyth Park, so that, you know, there's not necessarily an urgency there as there is for the streets, so that could probably proceed a little bit, you know, on a different timeline. So thanks for asking that question, Andrea.
Right, yeah, and I think with that one, I'm in favor too, the idea of allowing 1 or 2 in the city park. There's a question of what kind of fee, what kind of permission would need to be gotten. Would it be first come, first serve for the,
Right.
right, or do we have like a sharing program? So those are some some things to really think about. Good, I'm sorry, who was next? Michael? Then Terry?
Yeah, so I guess I'll answer my first question first, since you mentioned the parks. It seems like this food trucks in the parks seems largely self-regulating, that it wouldn't be profitable for there to really ever be more than one food truck. But at the same time, you know, on the obverse, I think Kingston Point is large enough where it would be profitable for there to be a food truck by the beach and a food truck by the baseball field, and to limit that seems a little unnecessary. It doesn't seem like it's currently a problem. And then I guess, and then my second question, if I can go ahead. It seems it would be a question of who's enforcing this. So I would assume parks would enforce this in the parks, but do they have the capability for that? Do they have the expertise for that? But who would enforce it when it's on the street? Is that parking? Is that the police department? Is that the fire department in terms of corners to get their rigs through? Is it the building department? Whose actually job it is to figure this all out, I think it needs to be spelled out as well. But my third point, I thought I had 2 points, but I really have 3, is how can we be regulating one type of commercial vehicle on the street rather than all commercial vehicles? Because if it's in terms of sight lines and distance to corners, you know, we have those same issues with landscaping trucks. Do we need to require them to be off the street at night as well? It just seems like this could be perceived as targeting one industry.
I'm sorry that people feel like they're targeted. This is really about public safety, and you rode with me before, so you've seen the problems that they are causing. But you know, these are all great questions that we've been going through for 6 months now. And I really appreciate that we're being worried about people's entrepreneurship. That's one thing we don't want to get rid of. But also, you know, the public safety issue, especially on these smaller streets, the pedestrians, like I wrote in the communication, the pedestrians can't see around the truck when another car is approaching. You know, I mean, these are, I would really love the conversation to keep going. The ideas go together, and let's come up with something solid so we could make all of the people inside, the people outside, and driving safe.
Go ahead, Nicholas.
So that the public safety aspect is entirely my last point about how can we target one type of commercial vehicle when in my ward there are food trucks, but I also have a very big issue on some of the streets with the number of landscaping trailers that are parked there all night, that it intercepts sight lines to the sidewalk, you know, that.
Right, if it's just the trailer, if it's just the trailer, they should be ticketed, because that's already in our ordinance. You know, they have to be connected.
Yeah, but even if they are, but it seems like it's just, if we're going to ban one type of commercial vehicle from city streets after hours, I don't see how we can not ban all commercial vehicles on city streets after hours.
Well, I think that's what she'll work on with Matt.
Okay.
Is figuring
Okay.
out those details, right?
Yeah, thank you.
And I would say I have a similar issue also about different kinds of commercial vehicles being parked in ways that are disruptive to neighborhoods and streets.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Well, they're not considered commercial, because a lot of them don't have, the trailers with the landscaping stuff do not have commercial plates, a lot of them, if you really look.
Terrell and Michelle?
No, actually, I think you addressed some of my issues, which had to do with, especially item number 2, food trucks will be able to use city parks, 1 per park. So by use, I'm assuming that means to operate in the city park, 1 per park. And so the whole idea of, you know, who gets first, you know, who gets preference, who gets, you know, is first come, first served, is on a rotating basis. I think some parameters need to be set up. And then the other thing that, if more than 5 tickets, your permit will be voided. I guess that's something that you'll be discussing with council.
Right, I put that on because no one's getting a ticket, and no one's, the one guy sat there and told us he's just not gonna move his truck.
Business,
And
right, right.
You know, which is horrible that people are just blatantly, putting it right in all of our faces. That they're not gonna obey what the law says. They're just not gonna do it no matter what. So
Right.
this is, I didn't hear you.
How did you land on 5?
I didn't hear, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, how did you land on the number 5? Which would trigger the permit, the truck permit being,
Well, if parking does start ticketing, because it is in our laws already, then after 5 tickets, they're going to do something. There's gonna be some kind of action and reaction. The action is they're going to basically obey the law. I mean, this I find, I can't comprehend this, that, people don't wanna obey the law and they're blatantly doing what they wanna do. Well, then why do we have any laws in the city whatsoever?
right, but is
You know?
that the law, 5 tickets?
No, that's not the law. What I'm saying is they don't move their trucks.
So,
Jeannie, she's asking you, not the general issue, but how did you get to the number 5? So why not?
I
3
just,
tickets?
because I thought that was almost lined up with if you get so many parking tickets, it was right in that general thought pattern.
Okay, so you'd want to compare exactly with the issue with parking tickets.
Yeah, I was kind of going on that thought pattern. That's why we put it out there for discussion again. And I did reach out to Matt a couple of times, but then he was part-time and he's full-time now, so maybe he has time to put this on the agenda.
Good, I think you all are going to meet, so we'll get that fixed. Michelle, then Andrea.
Yeah, I'll let Andrea go first. I have to calm some dogs down.
I have no dogs. I'm in school, so I'll go. Yeah. I agree with what Michael was saying about the parks. Some parks, I think one would be appropriate, but some parks, I think more than one is definitely appropriate and fair. So I'm thinking perhaps a conversation with Lindsay, because I would imagine that she would have, it would be her department that would be enforcing the parks. And maybe we could come up with some kind of perimeters around that, and then also see how she would feel about and how that would be enforced, and how it would be, what her thoughts on first come, first serve, which I don't necessarily like that idea, but I also can't think of anything better. Because I just think some of the parks having more than one food truck seems very fair to me.
I agree. I think the first come, first serve, if everyone moved the food trucks when they were done selling at the end of the day, or whenever they're done selling, then whoever gets to that spot the next day could have that spot. It's not their spot. They're not renting the spot. Otherwise, we can charge them rent on a city street. So you understand? So if everyone moves, say Joe Schmo lived on Liberty Street and he's parked all the time, then he moves one day and somebody else pulls in, there's nothing Joe can say because it's not his spot.
Well,
It's just
I
like
would
in
like
your
to.
car.
Sorry, Jeannie, I thought you were done. Can I go,
I'm
or you
sorry.
have more?
Go,
No,
go,
I
go.
would,
I'm sorry.
I would just like to see something a little bit more organized than, like, when I was thinking first come, first serve, I was thinking some kind of form that people would have to fill out, not like literally first come, first serve, because I think that could, like, a literal first come, first serve could cause fights and could cause people rushing to get to the place. Like, I could just see bad things. I mean, maybe that's just because I'm cynical, but I was thinking more of forms, like you would have to kind of sign up in advance, and I would imagine it would have to be through Parks and Rec, which is again why I was thinking Lindsay. I just think that would be a cleaner approach than to do whoever gets to the parking spot first.
That
Okay,
sounds reasonable to me.
Yeah, Michelle?
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Jeannie. So I just would like to say, I definitely agree about the residential neighborhoods. That's too confusing. But I hear what you're saying, Jeannie, about the width. So maybe if we can determine like a a minimum width for a street that it would need to be in order to support a food truck. Totally in support of food trucks being allowed in the city parks. I don't know that that necessarily is going to lure the trucks down to parks during the week, because they're going to be where they're going to situate themselves where they're going to make the most money and where their clientele is. So I don't know that that's necessarily a solution to a problem we're imagining we have. So I think it's just a separate issue that by allowing food trucks in the parks, I'm okay with anything from the intersections. But again, I would say I don't, if these food trucks are getting ticketed now and they're not being enforced, I don't understand how creating additional layer of legislation is going to solve what we think the problem is.
Okay, I think the process here then is Jeannie is going to meet with Matt. I think that there's certainly, Andrea mentioned the possibility of separating these out a bit. I think the food trucks in the park is kind of a separate issue from the other three items. Those three items seem to me to be a little bit more about enforcement in terms of the streets, enforcement and expectations. And then, so I think that the other part here is, Jeannie, when you and Matt meet, those 1, 3, and 4 might be the ones to look at first. And then Jeannie and whoever else is interested could meet with Lindsay to talk about the relationship of food trucks to the parks and think about some possible solutions to how to make it possible for food trucks to be in the parks. Are we good with that process?
Can I just make one quick comment about number 3? Can that be turned into 2 different ones? So must be more than 30 feet from any corner intersection, and then no residential areas as the 4th, because I think that those are very separate issues.
Sure.
And I think that, you know, I think everybody, if I heard correctly, who spoke on this is in favor of the 30 feet. But not everybody's quite in favor of the residential areas until there's more definition so that we know what we're voting for or discussing. I don't vote.
Okay, Jeannie?
I believe the residential area is on the books already. Matt, I think we discussed that one time already, that it is already on the books. That's why they are close to the curb. So, like I'm saying, these things are not being enforced, and maybe we just need some stiff enforcement and everybody could be happy then and just drop it. But that's not happening. And it's no one to blame. It's just, you know, not enough help or whatever. But, you know, and even maybe think about, maybe they would move them at night if they could use a city parking lot and then go back in the morning and move, you know, like they're under so much pressure that, you know, we really, you know, we have to buck up on this.
Okay, Michael, last word.
Yeah, just who is currently tasked with enforcing this?
I believe it was Vinny from parking. I'm not quite sure. I believe, because the one guy said he's had tickets already. And he just goes down and pays them.
Okay, thank you.
So that would be under 2, it depends, really. Like if it's just related to parking, if they're parked illegally, then it would be parking. If it's related to, say, their license or their.
I think this is firmly about their physical location in the city, their safety standards.
All right, Andrea, do you have a new hand up?
I do. Sorry, I know you wanted to wrap up, but somebody mentioned something in it. Actually, Jeannie mentioned it, using the city parking lots for overnight. Maybe that's also something, because I think that might be a good solution. Maybe talking to the mayor and Lindsay about the feasibility of that. Because that was actually another concern that I had, is if we're going to enforce, which I do definitely believe that we should be enforcing the laws of the land, but to be able to provide them something, I think is also important. So Jeannie, could you follow up with the mayor and perhaps Lindsay about that?
Oh, I definitely will. I'll talk to Matt, all three. Thank you. And thank you all for listening again.
Yeah, great, we appreciate it. All right, then we're moving on to the Ethics Task Force recommendation. President Schott will lead us in the...
Yep, so this is recommendation from the Ethics Advisory Council, or Task Force. I would also like to welcome my colleague and some of your former colleagues as well, Carl Frankel. So we started this after Alan Nace, who is the chair of the Ethics Board, came to the Common Council with some requests on changing and just cleaning up and just looking at the ethics code. So Alan and I decided to come up with this task force. It was 2 members from the Common Council, myself and Carl, and then 2 members from the Ethics Board, which is Charlotte Adamus and Michael Decker. And then Matt Jankowski was our counsel throughout this process. It obviously lasted a long time, which is why Carl so generously kept volunteering his time even past the council. Or his tenure with the council, but we now have several documents too that will need to be passed by the Common Council that we worked on, but we did, I think there were 3 or 4 documents that we worked on. Some of them are the Ethics Board's responsibility and some of them are the Common Council. So if it's okay, I would like to, and Charlotte and Mike couldn't be here today, but I'm sure if you have any questions from the Ethics Board side of things, they would be very open to answering any of those questions, as well as Alan Nace, who has been great through this process. So I would like to actually start with the financial disclosure form.
Yep.
Because this one's the easier one. So our goal from this, actually for the ethics code and the financial disclosure form and the complaint form, which is another one that we revised, was to make it, to clarify it so it was easier to read, not only for elected officials and department heads, for example, in the financial disclosure form, but also for the public. So when they read the documents, it makes a little bit more sense. There were some aspects of it that we couldn't change that much because we had to follow, the law, and had to keep some of the wording as such. So I'm just trying to, sorry, I've been sick all week, so I'm not quite as organized as I normally am. So I'm just pulling up the financial disclosure form. So basically with the financial disclosure form, we added an introduction on the first page. Does everybody have it pulled up?
We've got 2 copies of something and I think it's the old stuff. I don't see anything that's changed.
Yeah, could you send us like a red line changed version of all this?
Do you know where it says, for and Ellen are shipping with the documents provided? And it's not a red line, it doesn't show where the actual changes are, but it is a separate new financial disclosure form from the one that's currently being used.
It's on the agenda.
It's on the agenda, but it's hard to see what the changes are because there's no redlining. I mean, I personally went through and looked, and the only changes I saw, which may or may not be the only changes, are that it separates out City of Kingston income from other income, and then it adds involvement with not-for-profit organizations. Were there other changes?
Yeah, well, I could walk you through that, and Carl's will jump in if I miss anything. So, like I said, the first thing that we changed was that introduction, or we added it. So we did not have any kind of instruction or introduction in the original. We thought it was important so that everybody understood why they had to fill this out. So this is brand new. This was not in there. It gives direction and also gives the why to do it. Other than that, most of the financial disclosure form, it was really just to clean it up. It wasn't consistent in look. We did separate some of the questions into 2 instead of doing just one long question. We separated them into 2. Everybody could hear me?
Yes, yes.
Like, everybody is frozen on my screen, so I just wanted to make sure. Yeah, but otherwise than that, let me just go through quickly. Yeah, Coral, do you remember anything specifically that we changed? I mean,
And most of the.
Can you hear me?
Required under the general municipal law with Article 18. And so there wasn't substance wise, like it couldn't take away certain questions, but just wording things so that it was easier to understand, making sure that the outline was better. One of the biggest issues that they'd have is if somebody came across a question that didn't apply, they just skip the question, which you can't do no matter what. Even if it doesn't apply, you have to check a box that says it doesn't apply. So we made that more clear, put the instructions on, so that was, and basically just cleaned up, as she said, how it's formatted, so it's easier to read, as well as change some of the language so that it was less legalese, more just common words to make it easier to understand.
Coral, do you want to add anything?
First of all, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, hi, everybody. I don't know, I would just reinforce what Andrew said, was that we really just wanted to make it streamlined and accessible, easy to understand and fill out. And we wanted to address any outstanding issues that or uncertainties that might sort of seep through the cracks about what was covered and what was not. So we wanted to have kind of boundary clarity about what should and shouldn't be included as well. That's a bit general, but it's been like months since I really dove into it, and that's my best recollection.
Yeah, because the complaints that we were receiving and why people wanted to change it was they couldn't understand some of the questions. And it just, the form did look sloppy. So that's really the substance. I think Matt already said that, but it's hard to hear. But the substance was not changed in the form.
Mike?
Besides adding the introduction, which again, just for us, was to help with people completing this that we're supposed to, because there's still every year people who don't complete the disclosure forms. And they do eventually, but just not on time. So this can, if they understand it a little bit more, we're thinking that we'd get a little bit more compliance. So those were our reasons.
Go ahead.
So I guess you didn't change this, but my question really sort of began with number 1, which how did either you or your predecessors arrive with owning a piece of property within the city of Kingston or 1 mile boundary? Why would we not require disclosure of any property?
So that we did not change. So I don't know why. I honestly don't know how long this disclosure form has been in play and when it, and if it has ever been changed. So I wouldn't even know who to ask why the reasoning for that. We didn't change it. We've never had, or I didn't hear of any, neither did any of my teammates hear of any complaints to that. I mean, that is something that we could talk about. And, this is just our recommendation after working together for a year and a half on this. But if there's other things that you guys want to bring forward, now's the time.
Disclosing interests that may conflict with what you're doing with the city of Kingston.
Sure.
So having property within the city of Kingston, there's that potential for some sort of conflicts.
Sure, I got my
Something
house
within a
in Florida
mile.
next to the mayor, and we could be hating each other, and I could interfere with our city behavior.
What do you mean?
Yeah, I don't think the property stops.
No, but it's ownership of the property is what the issue is.
Yeah.
So, but if you own property outside, a distance outside of the city, there really isn't the potential for your strict ownership of that property creating a conflict with your employment and duties here. Maybe your behavior outside there might conflict, but your mere ownership of it is what your behavior. So that's kind of why they don't say every single piece of property that you own, but they keep it limited to property that's in Kingston and within a mile, because within a mile, it's close enough, there could be, God only knows, some sort of stormwater issue, I don't know, but something, it's within a vicinity that's close to the city. So, and it's an arbitrary 1 mile it's not, you know. So,
Okay, okay,
That makes sense.
sure.
So along those same lines, item number 11, trust. Identify each interest in a trust or estate or similarly beneficial interest in any assets in excess of $2,000, except for IRS eligible retirement. For you, your spouse, and husband. So just sort of like sort of tags along with that question. If it's not, how would a trust represent a conflict of interest?
well, because it's if you are the beneficiary, a primary beneficiary, you're a trustor, you have legal title, or, you know, actually benefit from it. That's not necessarily, the city could be doing business, or the trust could own a company that the city's doing business, or other things. So it's a way of disclosing that this is, you know, an economic interest that you own. There could be, the trust could be investing in property within the city, but basically that way, you know, you don't own property in the city.
Right, but
trust
this is
you know,
not
that kind of thing,
specific,
keeping
this
things
is
protected.
not specific to the city though.
No, but the trust as a legal entity.
Right.
So disclosing that that's something economic, that is a legal entity that you have an economic interest in. Just like if you own a business, so let's say you own, you know, whatever your business, but your business doesn't have your name in it, you still, and your business potentially is doing business in Kingston, or is doing business with the city of Kingston, or may benefit by some sort of decisions that you make in your position. The same goes for the trust. Like, they're separate entities, but entities in which you are financially benefiting from.
I understand. However.
And
how-
that's state, that's
it's not-
required
I'm
under
not-
state law, we can't remove that. I guess that's the long and short of it. So general municipal law, Article 18 outlines the minimums for the ethical requirements. We can expand upon that. It's also what empowers us to create our local code, okay? If we didn't have a local code, you would all be subject to the county's code, okay? We created a local code, now you're subject to this. It provides the minimum that the state provides and can expound and there's certain requirements for the disclosures that cannot be removed, that are required under state law, so.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's why there weren't many changes on this, is because we had some of the same questions, but with council's advice or guidance, you know, that's why the substance didn't change, because there's very little to no wiggle room changing the substance.
Gotcha.
And if for some odd reason we wanted, just like you said, you want to have everybody disclose every piece of property everywhere, you guys can do that. You can make it more stringent reporting. But in general, like under state law, under the reasoning behind it is because there's, you know, a potential.
I think if you have to disclose all sources of income, you should
And you
disclose
don't-
ownership.
But you don't necessarily disclose, like, let's say you own stock in AT&T or something like that. You don't disclose those kinds of sources of income. It would be, you know, and there's the definitions as to, you know, if you're a primary shareholder of, you know, privately held or more than, you know, a certain percentage. So it's not necessarily that every single, like, you don't have to disclose how much money is in your bank account or any of your personal investments that aren't, you know, something in which you have like a controlling interest. They only really want to focus on the interests that could potentially, you know, impact your decisions and, you know, what you do on behalf of the city.
Michelle?
Yeah, I'm not feeling very well, and I think I'm gonna need to sign off.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, you'll be
Take
right.
care, feel better.
Bye.
Feel better, Michelle.
Thanks. Thank you.
You feel better.
Thanks.
Right.
Are there any other questions on the form?
No, just one grammatical thing. I don't know.
Could we get a red line change version for caucus? Of these?
Yeah, it's very confusing because we got two copies and they seem to be the exact same thing. So it's, you know, I guess you could introduce us to the ethics part itself.
Wait, but are you talking about the financial disclosure form, or are you talking about the ethics code?
No, we're talking about the rest of the package. We got 2 copies of the form and the ethics code, and they're the same as far as I can tell. So my assumption was one was supposed to show the original and the other was supposed to show the changes, but they're the same. So that's what we're confused by what it is we're supposed to be looking at.
Oh, just for to be clear, because I want to separate the two, because there's two different processes. I'm not asking right now for both of these to be passed, or the task force we're not asking for that. It would be great to, the financial disclosure form is fairly simple. So we could pass that, and that would be a resolution. The other one would be a local law. So can we just stay with the disclosure form first?
Yes, but I think what Rennie is saying and what the challenge we're having is we can't tell what the changes are from the original version just by looking at this. So is there a way that you could?
I mean, I would have to redo the whole thing because we did it all piecemeal and like split it in different, well, I guess I did the financial disclosure form, so I could see what I could do, but like I said, it's not yeah, sure, I'll do it.
Well, you don't need to do that. I mean, at the very, I'm fine with the financial disclosure form because, at the very least, though, it might be helpful just to have a copy of the original. Without having to go through and do necessarily redline, it'd be easy enough to compare the two. But if that's what folks want.
Yeah, and I did that. I only saw two changes really.
Okay.
2 or 3 when they just, as Andrea said, they broke out from something that was in one, they broke out into 2 components. So.
Okay, so then going along with what Andrea's saying, are folks okay with saying it's okay, the changes on the financial disclosure?
Here's the thing,
Yeah.
the financial disclosure is directly referenced in section 4910, so it's actually passed as part of the local law being passed or the ordinance, so.
Okay.
So we don't even need to pass anything from that tonight, Matt, when we pass
Yeah,
that?
it would have to be adopted when the changes are made because
Gotcha.
it's referenced directly, the attachment.
Okay. So then we can move on to talking about chapter 49, ethics.
Okay, so this one, and again, the reason why we don't have a red line is because we did it, there were 4 of us, 5 of us with Matt, but it was the 4 of us who was tasked each section, so we then kind of copied and pasted it together. I could step you through, I have my notes of what we changed. I didn't expect you guys to pass it tonight because I figured that there'd be more conversations. I just wanted to get at least the financial disclosure form, even if it's not passed tonight, because we don't need to pass it, at least that, squared away that everybody feels comfortable. But again, for the ethics code, I mean, there were some more changes with this one. And I could try and go through this one to do the best I can with redlining it, but I don't have everybody's notes. So it would be a little complicated doing it, but I could do my best. But anyway, we followed the same principles as we wanted it to be clear because we felt the clearer the language was, the more consistent it was, then the more transparent it would be to the public. So that was our overreaching goal when we did this. We took chapter 49 of our ethics code, we compared it to the model code, and we compared it to New York State General Municipal Law, Article 18, which Matt has mentioned, and we also looked briefly at the county code. But most of it was comparing it to the model code of ethics for local governments. And again, it was a lot of just changing the language, not much of the substance. So for example, the purpose, that was changed. We're now using we're recommending, recommending the model code for the purpose because we thought it was a little bit easier to read. Some of the definitions, we added a couple definitions. We had a very long conversation about household and family. I believe actually we kept all of that. We added interest to the definition, so that is something that's new. But otherwise, the definitions should be the same. And Matt and Carl, feel free to, if I miss something, please jump in. A couple other things just with form again. We changed some of the numbers because we wanted to split some of the pieces up. So for example, standards of conduct, we split that up. We also, for standards of conduct, used the model code language. We added applicability from the model code, so that is something that's new. If you're reading along with the recommendation, that's something that's new. Otherwise, the substance stays the same there. Going down a little bit more, confidential information. We had very long conversations about this one. All we did was turn that into 2 sentences instead of 1. We had several editors on this task force, so we talked a lot about commas and periods and all kinds of fun stuff. So again, but all of the substance to this is the same. We just changed some of the section numbers. Disclosure of interest in legislation, that is something that is, we took from the model code, so that is something that's different. Investments in conflict with official duties, that is also, we took the model code language. As well as outside employer or business, that is also the model code language.
So were those paragraphs not in the original code, or are they just changed from the original?
Its substance was the same, it was, we liked the language better.
Ah, okay.
There was very, very few substance that we changed in this as well. A couple tweaks of our own in terms of what we thought was clearer, like changing one really, really long sentence into 2 that made more sense. And then the model code just had some stronger language, in our opinion. The political solicitations was kind of sort of new. We just didn't have a title to it. So we used our language, but we added the title that the model code had. So just some boring formatting things. Added some like use of municipal resources. We changed that language. It was city property before. So again, that was just taken from the model code. The recusal, we took the model code language. And then one big thing that we knew we had to do is the annual disclosure form. It was outdated. So it didn't, and this was, the task force had asked me to have a conversation with the mayor about this, because before this recommendation, it was missing department heads. So they weren't all filling out the financial disclosure form. So after I talked with the mayor about it, we both agreed that every department head should fill this out. So we updated that list to say that, and there's a couple spots, I think, assistant corp counsel, and I think there was one other that wasn't specifically a department head, but otherwise they're there. We also double check to make sure because you'll notice on that list that there are some of our commissions and boards, but others are not. So how that was decided is any board that takes an actionable decision, they have to fill out a financial disclosure form. Any board or commission that is advisory, they do not have to fill out the financial disclosure form. And that was basically consistent with what it was before. However, it was an outdated list. So it was confusing to people to wonder why some boards did and why some don't. We also added a catch-all from that so that the common council could more easily add if, so if there's a new department that the mayor creates and we have a new department head, we'll be able to just add that in versus going through a whole change.
Sarah has a question.
Yep.
Yeah, just looking at this, I see that alderman at large is listed as someone who has to file a disclosure form, but does that include all of the alder people?
Yes, you'll see members of the common council.
Under him.
Oh, it's alphabetical, I see. So I missed.
Yeah, that was another thing that we did. We alphabetized the list. It wasn't alphabetized before.
A lot of what we did was at that level of kind of very granular detail. This is really hyper granular work, because not only do you have to make sure everything is consistent inside documents, you have to make sure it's consistent across documents. So there was a lot of back and forth and detailed work that happened here.
Yeah.
Why isn't the Historic Preservation Commission listed here? Or commissions are not on this?
Again, it is dependent on whether they are an actionable board or commission versus an advisory board or commission.
So they are an actual, I mean.
Aren't they
Yes.
actually?
We act, they advise us.
They're advisory, okay.
They're advisory.
Gotcha, okay.
Well, not completely.
But I'm just looking, so the HLPC is not on here?
No.
It seems like it should be because they do take action, they do take action. So I was just looking at the.
Pertains.
Yeah.
Oh, I could add that. I went through that was me going through that list, so I must have missed that. So I could add. Matt, if you don't mind double checking me on that list, I mean, maybe not right now on the spot.
I don't see.
No, it's not. I don't see it there either.
Andrea, did you address the nepotism, or did I miss you mentioning that?
Yeah, we didn't go.
Did I skip it already?
Yes.
We went past that.
Okay. All right, so that is one thing that we added. I don't know, Pearl, do you want to talk about it? Because I think this was what you added.
Well, basically, we felt that it was important to give more clarity and that we really ought to add it and be very clear about the guidelines are. And if recollection serves, and that's a big if, I basically just lifted this from the model code and cut and pasted it, or most of it, into this document. And I'll let you read it for what it says, but it basically says one piece is about recusal and the other piece is about supervision. And we thought we needed to cover both bases, and that's what this does.
We had a long discussion of this in a prior council about whether or not to list out what you mean by family or household. So
we spent about 3 months discussing that.
Yes, months. Every meeting, our conversation was like at least an hour long about the definition of family and household. If you look at the definition list, though, we did settle with
Definition E is family.
the two different definitions of family and household. And we felt fairly confident. I mean, I know it's a little confusing, but there were spots where it should be family or the definition of family. And then there's some spots that we felt there really should be a definition of household. But that was a several months long conversation on those two words. It's incredibly complex.
And
there is no perfect answer to it. There are always kind of, what about if this situation and it doesn't quite fit? And we could not find a solution that was 100% going to cover every possible hypothetical. I think ultimately there's going to be there may be a time that arises where you just have to sort of do the right thing based on what you know, not on what this says.
Gerald?
so when you say directly supervise, is that to say that you would have ultimate authority in say signing for a raise, or is it daily supervision? Does this have to be like your direct report, or I'm just not understanding what you mean by directly supervise.
Pearl, do you want to take it or do you want me?
Well, I'll give my understanding of it. There's a department head and a mayor. Let's just say very hypothetically, and a relative of the mayor is in it, if they have to, it's okay if they report to the department head, they can't report directly to the supervisor's superior, a reporting officer, right? So there has to be a link that separates the two family members from each other, so there's not a direct reporting. Is that clear? Does it sound is as muddled as I think it sounded coming out?
It's clear, but I'm just wondering how the city reconciles then the mayor and his wife, who was the head of.
Because there's a department head between the two.
There was a.
That's the point. So this is actually designed to meet the current, I don't know if it was designed to, but it has the effect of meeting that specific situation and legitimizing the relationship because Julie is not reporting directly to the mayor.
We
And
thought
this
it was
language
inappropriate.
Comes from the state statute, so.
No names, please.
But, yeah, so this was, the language is taken basically, this is the same kind of language that, is used in other statutes, because in particularly even smaller towns or other things,
Right.
you know, it's not uncommon for more than one member of a family working for a municipality, but there needs to be that separation, which they're not being overseen by a family member. Then with regard to decisions pertaining to pay and other things like that, that's where that first part of the nepotism comes in, where you can't participate in any decisions, specifically, you know, appointing, hiring, promoting, disciplining, discharging the family member. So if there was some sort of vote pertaining to giving a family member a promotion, and then whoever's related to that person would have to, you know, recuse themselves.
Yeah, we had a lot of conversations on this piece too, because we do live in a very small city where there's a lot of people who have, you know, relatives that you have a lot of relatives in the city. So we didn't want to make it so it makes it hard for people to run for office, for example, or to be a department head because they have because there's too many connections in a small city, but find a balance because we also know that it's really important that the public trusts us as much as possible. So we tried really hard to find that balance. And so that was where we kind of settled on with that, felt comfortable with that too.
Right,
Okay,
we can move on then to the next item that was alter ed.
Okay, so I just have to find where I went back. So yeah, the list, and Matt, if you could look through it and make sure I didn't miss anything other, I don't think I missed any department heads, but if I missed any other boards or commissions.
Yeah, I'll review it.
Okay, thank you. And then the next section is the Board of Ethics, and Carl and I had asked Charlotte and Mike to kind of do this part of it. I think they kept most of the same language. Some of it because we talked about the appointment of ethics board members, but we were also limited to what our charter says. So, because we had conversations about how complex this section is. You know, the mayor shall solicit recommendations from the Common Council, but that's pretty much how strong we could keep this language with giving us being the Common Council, more say without overstepping the charter, which supersedes this. So we didn't change that language, even though we considered it.
On page 13, it says removal of members.
Yes.
It'd be important to clarify who it is that is responsible for that process. Is that the Board of Ethics? Would it be the Common Council, the mayor, any of the above?
Doesn't it say the comments of council?
Yeah, it's Common
it
Council.
says council,
Oh, I'm sorry.
it says, yeah,
By the Common Council.
reconciliation meet, yeah.
What would the process be? How does the council know? would it be the responsibility of somebody on the ethics board to bring that to the common council's attention, or?
That's a good question. We didn't talk about that. I mean, one thing that we also did throughout this process, because we realized that there was no council liaison for the board since before my time. So that might be the solution, Rennie, because if we have a council liaison for that, they'll be able to, you know, track better with the chairperson. Otherwise, I guess it would have to be the chairperson that would reach out to the common council to let us know that they're not meeting the qualifications.
What if
I
it
don't
is-
know. I can't think of any other solution.
There's no limit, anyone becomes aware, can bring it to the common council's attention if the
Okay.
member of the ethics board is not meeting the qualifications.
I don't know if that's worth having that in there or just if you feel comfortable with that, Rennie.
Carol and Michael?
Just going back for a moment to qualifications of members of the board.
Let's make sure we're done with that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm still talking about removal, but that does
Okay.
speak to yours. So it doesn't actually state what the grounds for removal seem to be. Oh, failure to meet the qualifications.
Failure to meet the qualifications, which goes to what Terrell was just gonna ask about.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
It's okay. And actually, another thing that we did was change the order of some of these because it just made a little bit more sense. So that's why if I keep messing up, I'm looking at the old chart plus the new one. So if I go out of order, it's because we changed the order. So what was the question on qualifications?
So item number 2, no more than 2 board members may be registered in the same political party at any given time. There being 5 board members. How?
Yeah, so we also, Carl and I kind of, we had Charlotte and Mike weigh a little bit more into that than us because they understand how it operates. And they actually both really liked that to continue with that. So I think right now they only have 4 members. So that if anybody knows anybody who wants to serve on the ethics board, but so it could be independent, it could be Republican, Democrat, Green Party, you know. And they said, I asked if it has been an issue in the past that they had a hard time fulfilling this qualification, and they both said no. And that they liked it because it makes it a more fair process.
It gives it a better appearance of, so there's less of a chance that people say, oh, it's, you know, political, they just, you know, are against this person or didn't find for this person based on political affiliation. That was the initial.
Exactly.
It's been in there since the initiation of our statute. Obviously, it doesn't reflect the makeup of our city, but, you know, it's really up to you guys. I know that was the feeling of the board members right now. There's 4 members, one's independent, 2 are registered Democratic Party, one's registered Republican Party. So it's something that, you know, is worth discussing if anyone else, but that was the basis for what they
I
decided
guess
to
what
leave
I'm,
it.
oh, that's part of that. I guess my real issue is why would anybody need to disclose their party?
Well, it's public knowledge.
How?
Who you're registered to is public knowledge. Anybody could call the Board of Elections and say, who's Terrell Lincoln's registered to.
I did not know
I'm gonna tell you to foil it, but you would get it.
that. Right, okay. Huh.
I would recommend if you have questions or concerns, you reach out to Charlotte or Mike, because like I said, Carl and I really deferred to their with their thoughts on this, because we just, if it's operating well and they felt confident with it, and Carl, I know I'm kind of speaking for you, so just kick me under the table if I'm speaking incorrectly.
I can't reach you, Andrea.
That we felt confident if they felt confident with it. Because I also felt like too, there were some aspects of this especially after Carl left the council, you know, me being the only elected official on this board task force, there were some decisions that I really wanted to leave to everybody else and not me, because, you know, you all at the table and myself, like, we may have ethics charges brought us against us, we have to follow this ethics code, and that was one of them that I felt wasn't as, I didn't feel as comfortable making that decision. So I would recommend reaching out to Charlotte or Mike.
Yeah, I think in our sort of era of increased political engagement is, which is good, it could be a turnoff that people wouldn't want to re-register as an independent if they felt obligated. It might cause people to make a choice that I don't think we want people to necessarily have to choose. I think if the makeup was required to be reflective of the political affiliation of the city based on a percentage, plus or minus, 5% to equal something, a 5-member board, I think that would be a little fair, because in essence, this actually gives a minority of residents an outside influence in the makeup of the board.
An outsized influence.
Well,
What you don't want,
Oh, go ahead, Carl.
well, I mean, this is exactly the sort of deliberation we spent a long time having, and it's an important deliberation. And if you come out differently, I don't really have a horse in this race. That's fine. But what we were sensitive to was the danger that one party would gang up on somebody, and because they had an advantage, a numerical advantage on the board, rule for political reasons against somebody rather than out of reasons relating to justice and equity. And that's what this was designed to sort of, it's like, imagine the US Supreme Court, if we had, there's a proposal for a new one that says 2 conservatives, 2 liberals, and 1 centrist. And that's how you get decisions to keep it from being politicized. That's kind of the vision we were trying to not implement here, because it's already here, but that we embraced by doing this. No, there are other white ways to do it, right?
So there can never be a majority of it.
Yeah, I understand that, and
So it is to basically have it not reflect, any political.
but it is by effect giving one party an outsized influence of their actual influence in the city.
No, but they're not a political board.
No,
They're supposed to be apolitical.
But yeah, so why even have any requirement for registration?
But there's not it's allowing for no party to have a majority. So it says you can't have more than 2 in a political party.
Well, I think what Michael is saying, and because the Kingston, it's mostly Democrats. So to have, right, Michael, I mean, tell me if I'm misunderstanding what you're saying, but to say that you can't have more than 2 Democrats on the ethics board is taking the majority of the people and making it a minority on this board, right?
Yeah. Exactly, thank you. You said it more eloquently than I did. I don't know, I don't view party affiliation as necessarily a determinant in what's going on, I think we're all of the same party here, but we're of wildly different views on any number of things. I don't view party as this be-all end-all of determinant of ethics.
Is that a requirement, that disclosure, is it required for participation in any other board or commission, or I've never been asked to disclose that.
No, this is
So
ethics,
this is
as opposed to
ethics.
planning or, historic
Yeah,
preservation.
the whole purpose is to try to take kind of politics out, so not allowing for a party to have a majority. But under the assumption that could be used, because regardless of party affiliation, there is no doubt that ethics complaints are often filed
Right.
without necessarily a basis for purposes. We definitely do seem to see certain ones corresponding with certain people are running for election.
Mm.
And, and this is to try to take some of the politics out of it, but again, I'm not aware, and I can check the state that it's required that we have that in there. I can double check that, so it is something that you guys can address. But that was the reason.
I'm just wondering, so one of the crucial things early on is about avoiding the appearance of impropriety, right?
Yes.
So I'm just wondering, would that meet your concern, or?
I don't think, maybe it's just that I have such a cynical view of political parties that I don't view it as necessarily just because you're the Republican member of the board I think you're gonna come out against me. In fact, I would be kind of worried about the other one. So I think that I don't know, it's just, and I think it's also a barrier because I'm not willing to change my party affiliation to sit on the board. But that doesn't necessarily, and I would assume that many people.
So it does greatly limit the applicant.
And because we're a rather one-sided enrollment advantage in the city, we are cutting off, in effect, whole chunks of the city for no other reason than how they chose to register. I don't know, I just think it's a barrier when we were talking about last month about barriers to serving on boards, that this is also a barrier to serving on the board.
Maybe for this point, if you're okay with this.
Yeah,
Since we're probably not gonna vote on this tonight, if you wanna turn that into a specific proposal,
sure.
why don't you do that? And then we can debate that specific thing and compare the two. Is that all right?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Can I also, I do plan on reaching out because Michael and Charlotte couldn't be here, like I said. I'm gonna bring this concern to them too, to see if they want to weigh in. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and I mean, even if it's, how would you feel if it was at any given time, no more than 3 ethics board members? Like some,
I think that is an accurate reflection of the current makeup of the enrollment of the city of Kingston. And I think if it was just, if it could be pegged to a percentage, I think that is better than an actual head count.
Well, the one thing is, why not remove it altogether then?
Yeah.
Because I think the whole purpose was so that there couldn't be a majority of any party. But then why limit it at all if why even, so.
But I do see the advantage in having a board not be entirely made up.
Right. Yeah. I do too.
all right, I will reach out to them and see if they want to weigh in. And then if they do, I'll send you any communication from them.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other issues on the qualifications?
Not yet.
Okay, and then I skipped around a little bit too much. The appointment of board members, like I said, we kept that to the same. Vacancies, we kept to the same. Removal of members, we kept to the same. Board of Ethics meetings, same. The Board of Ethics record keeping, we did change it. I don't think this is really relevant to the Common Council. But we changed the language because they don't really have a place of their own, and hopefully that will change January 1st, that they'll have at least some kind of filing cabinet for themselves. I'm working on getting for them. But this language would fit to where it would fit to it would fit into what they were already doing. The language before they weren't in compliance with because they didn't have their own space. So that language is different, but just to match compliance.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. Jurisdiction powers. That is all the same.
You could go up and down with this.
So
sorry, what was that?
Were there changes in the next section, review list and disclosure statements?
I was just checking that.
Just because I'm gonna make sure of one thing. I don't remember the specific details now, but when we had a major ethics change about 12 years ago, and there was a huge argument because some people were claiming that the ethics law did not actually allow for anyone to open the envelopes.
I'm sorry, you say open the envelopes? Is that what you said?
Open the envelopes that the disclosure forms were in. Right, so I just want to make sure that that's understood here, because that's what I would understand by if they're gonna, review the annual disclosure statements. It means that they have the power to actually open them. I think there was some issue about they had to go through like a FOIL request to open them, or anyway, I just,
Yeah, so I think that was already fixed because we didn't fix it and it's not in here. So I think at some point that over the years it's been fixed because they do read through when we send in the financial disclosure forms. Matt could better talk on the process because I'm not there for that, obviously. But they do review it, so they do have the ability, the authority to open the envelopes.
Yeah, I would-
If you want to go in further on that, but I think we're good addressing that issue.
all right, okay. I will make that assumption then too.
Yeah, because I didn't know that at one point that they couldn't open the envelopes.
Yeah, it was when we still had a form of divided government, but anyway.
Yeah, inquiries and hearings, are all the same. Referrals by the ethics board is all the same. Oh, another little thing that we did, we changed he and her, or he or her to they.
Okay.
That was also another long conversation. We had a lot of long conversations.
All right, well, good, we don't want to, what's next?
Well, if you ever want to hear about our long conversations, just let Carl and I know. We'll take a walk on the beach with you and
We'll
talk.
wait for the opera.
Spend a long weekend together.
Yeah. The advisory opinions, that is all the same. Public inspection is all the same. Penalties for offenses, we took the model language here, the model code language, excuse me. But in substance, it's all the same.
I'm sorry, is there, in the introduction or in the disclosure form itself, is there any notice that says that a filer has the right to request that information could be redacted before being made public?
No.
Because I see under 49.6M, public inspection, it says the board shall review any request for redaction of information from disclosure form by an individual city officer or employee. So since that is a power that a filer has, shouldn't that be in the introduction?
Probably.
Page 16.
Records of the board, are available for public inspection.
So you're suggesting we put that in the introduction of the financial disclosure form?
Yes.
Does anybody have any issue with that? Oh, I could make that change. What section was that in the code?
It's page 16. I'm guessing that it's section 49.6.
Yeah.
Paragraph M or subsection M.
All right, I could make that change.
Thank you.
Thanks for catching that. All right, where am I now? Penalties for offenses. I think I already said that one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, effect on filing of claims. This is 49.8. This is also the same. Measure, talking like a musician. 49.9. This one we did change to the model code and also just to fit with what we were doing. So kind of matching our own compliance. Excuse me. And then we'll, of course, attach the new financial disclosure form. The other things that we talked about were training, because there actually is a requirement in the code for the ethics board to conduct training and also to have a handout. As you all remember, in the beginning of this year, in January, we did start the ethics training that we all went to.
Yep.
And so that will be a yearly event. And Charlotte and I are going to work on a brochure, basically, that will kind of take this ethics code into a short, easy to explain handout. So all elected officials and department heads, anybody who has to adhere to the ethics code will have that. So hopefully, and that it was already in the ethics code, we weren't complying with it. So we talked about getting rid of it for that reason, but we felt it was important to keep it in and just to start following it. Because the more people understand the ethics code when they come into office or as a department head, the more they're going to follow it and the better government will be.
All right, anything else?
For me, no, I don't know if Carl has anything to add. It was, like I said, it was a long process and a lot of detailed work, and very lucky to work with Carl, Charlotte, and Mike on this. It was a really, really good team effort. But we're, of course, happy to hear any suggestions or thoughts. Carl, I don't know if you want to say anything else.
Well, yes, I do. I want to thank you, Andrea, because you led it really wonderfully, and you're overwhelmed with work, and you really showed up in the best possible way. So thank you. I think she really owes she's the first among equals and did a fabulous job. So thanks to her. You know, at the risk of really annoying Andrea, having complimented her, I think to understand, if you really want to take a granular look at what we did and not just look at sort of our top line, that's the possible memory approach. We should give you the original versus the red line, and we should get it to you. And that's the way, if you really want to do a deep dive and really get into it. Otherwise, we think we did a really good job. There are 1,000 things we could debate and do differently. And so it's really up to you how deep you want to do. And if you want to make a formal request for us to give a red line copy of it, we can probably make it happen. Is that a fair statement, Andrew?
Yeah, I just can't make it happen tomorrow.
And on that note, I was looking through to see, I do have a red line copy from May. So I don't know if it's the final, there may have been.
We had
It's not.
changes after that, but that would be an
Yeah, we do.
awesome starting point, Matt. So if you want to send that to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
So,
Carol?
just one little side. So each employee will be furnished a hard copy?
So that is another thing. So that was already in our code, and we considered taking that out because it wasn't adhered to, but we felt that it is important to have this adhered to. So we're going to make, the ethics board said that they would make sure that would happen.
Yeah, my concern has moved, it's like just the green aspect of this. Can you require that people read it online and just sign it online, and then if a person were to request it, they can be given a hard copy as opposed to be making?
Does it specifically say a hard copy?
It says furnish a copy, so that's why it was my question, do you mean a hard copy?
I would interpret that to include digital copies would satisfy that requirement as well.
I would too.
Also, when you sign the financial disclosure form, I think, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's a part that says you read the ethics code, right?
Yeah, I know that came up during our discussion. I believe it is in there.
Shall receive a copy.
At the answer, that they've received a copy of the ethics, yes, that they've received a copy. So if anyone is filling this out and seeing the certification and they haven't received a digital copy, they should not sign this until they do. So then just reach out to the town, our city clerk, and they're obligated to provide you with a digital copy.
All right. We're all good with that?
Thank you both.
Thank you, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
A lot of work, yeah.
Thanks, Matt.
So do you want me to have that before next law? You're not passing anything tonight, right?
No,
No,
So you want me to have it for the next laws and rules meeting? And if I get it done sooner, that's okay?
yeah, I think that's plenty of time.
yeah,
No, it's
Because
fine.
then that'll give you a couple of weeks before you actually vote. Are you comfortable with that? Just like the 48-hour rule for laws and rules? I'll try and do it sooner, but I keep getting sick.
No, don't worry. So Elissa, can you make sure that this item is put on old business for next month, laws and rules?
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right, then we're moving to the first item under old business, which pertains.
Hi, everybody.
To resolution
Bye, Carl.
156 of 2024. Is anyone responsible for clarifying what this one's about? This is the historic landmarks preservation. It's about,
oh, that's the whole.
Well, I believe this is what below the planning board recommendation, right?
Yes. 26, right, and they approved it. As did Ulster County, right?
Correct.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
So that, yeah, so that's basically in conjunction with the other order of business in which the recommended changes to our zoning code by the planning board, or not planning, by the HLPC to that specific part of the code that relates to historic landmarks commission. And the suggested changes, I know it was already presented and they outlined, but just to kind of give you guys a quick bullet points. Basically, they updated it so that the language, we had some language that was actually unique to the city of Kingston. We use terms that aren't used by the state and that federal landmarks, departments, committees, those kinds of things. So change the language so it's more in line with what is utilized elsewhere. And basically cleaned up, but they didn't really change like the criteria that is looked at or anything of that nature. So I know my office has reviewed it, the planning board has reviewed it, county planning board has reviewed it. We're all recommending the changes. And I don't know if there's any additional questions pertaining to this. I know it was discussed last month. So if there are no questions, anyone has
Andrew?
I do, yeah, sorry. I haven't been tracking this much at all. But I did hear a concern, and I wish Michelle was here because I think somebody reached out to her directly about this. Should this go forward to the zoning task force that we have? That was a question somebody brought up to both Michelle and myself. Or is that not a thing here?
You know, it's really within your discretion. You know, I know the zoning task force is looking at, you know, specific issues that arise and are coming up. This is something that was, you know, directly observed by the Historic Landmarks Commission. They basically didn't really have much time during the initial review when the code was passed to really give their input to the section of the code that pertained to them. Now that they had an opportunity, these changes basically, as I said, bring the code into better alignment with you know, state and national landmarks preservation laws.
And this would need a public hearing, correct?
It would be passed by an ordinance, because it's part of our zoning code. So our zoning code allows for us to, pass ordinances.
Where did I see that there would be a public hearing? Am I thinking something separately?
I think Sue sent us a letter that said that it would require, was that this or another one, it would require a.
I remember us discussing the planning board statute.
That's right, I think it was right.
Oh, was that the planning boards, the item number 4?
I think so.
Wait.
I think changing the makeup of the planning board is a little.
Right, but I think that she said something about, she sent us a letter referring to the planning board's, referring what I thought.
Was there, because this was originally sent up together with the other portion, which was addressing the outdated section that had just been left there when we had initially adopted this as part of the zoning. Was there a hearing scheduled when that came before the council?
With the actual zoning code change? When we did the citywide zoning code?
No, we're talking about the removal of, I believe it was chapter 250. Okay. Yeah.
Did we have a public hearing for that? Was that the question?
Yes.
We did not.
No, but I just pulled up the email. And not everybody's on this email. That's why people don't know what I'm talking about. I had sent this to everybody. But it's about this, the HLPC section 405. Yeah, let me forward this to you all. Because it does specifically say there should be a public hearing.
I thought I had seen that somewhere.
Is that before or after?
Yeah, it was just you, me, and Michelle on that. So you guys should all have that now.
Right, because I think the planning board has to schedule the public hearing, right?
No, the planning board doesn't.
It doesn't.
It would be with the common council, would have the public hearing at the next common council meeting if you set it up before.
Is that required or is that a suggestion?
That's what I don't remember.
That was my question.
Got it.
No, I honestly.
But you can let us know.
Unlike a local law, you don't have to have the two hearings, but you have to double check whether you
Maybe it's
have
not necessary.
hearings with.
Because that would kind of solve my question about whether the zoning task force could weigh in, because this would give them time to weigh in if we're scheduling a public hearing.
So should we just put this on old business for next month?
Yeah, so what we could do is we could put it on for old business, and you don't need to actually pass a resolution to do a public hearing. We could just call, I could just call one. So if before the next laws and rules meeting, we know we have to.
Subsection, looks like would require it, so I can just double check that.
Well, that's okay. We can figure that out too later.
Yeah.
So, okay, so Andy, you're gonna take responsible for shunting this over?
Talking to myself here. Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you. Then item number 2 in old business, referral response from UC Planning Board regarding text revision. Is that something we actually act on, or is that just the,
I think we were waiting for it and now they've sent it.
okay, so it just goes along with the item number 1. Yes. All right,
Yes.
item number 3, Michael.
I have no update for you guys, but I would like to see all business next month. That's okay.
Fine with me.
Thank you.
All right, so keep item 3 on old business, and then item 4.
I can comment on that.
All right,
That came, since I'm the liaison to the planning board, that came up and they would like to continue it as old business on the next meeting, because right now, what Sue Cahill has done is send out a communication to the members of the planning board to get their opinion on the planning board statute changes. So we should have it by next meeting.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, next meeting is good. Yeah, next meeting is very good.
All right. Anything else? Any other business?
I'm gonna commute home, so have a nice night.
Motion to-
Feel better.
All in favor?
Aye. All right. Thank you, Alyssa. Good night, Jeannie.
Thank you.
Good night, thank you.